Welcome to the live stream. All right, this is system build number 33. I have reset up the studio a little bit, so if you guys see me looking a little off to the left, I apologize, but it was the best spot to put my monitor for chat as well as anything else. So if you're wondering why I'm looking left, you now know why. I will try to look as much as I can in front of the camera, but we're also going to be doing a build, so you'll see everything on the overhead. So this is system build 33. I'm Brian. This is Build It with Brian series, and it is Friday. Hopefully everybody's having a good Friday. It is Friday the 13th. It might be a little spooky, but it's fine. And we're going to basically build an entire system. This does have a system with the GPU. We're probably going to do the flashback utility or the Qflash utility because I don't think this processor is supported directly with this board off the original BIOS. So we'll probably have a way of doing that. I have set that up on 2 USB flash drives. I got the original one for Windows 11 and I got another one for the flashback utility itself. It could be on the same disk, but it would have to be FAT32, unfortunately. So let's get into it. Let me show you what we're going to go on, and we'll move on from there. Let me get the overhead on. All right, let's just get this in place. Okay, so we don't need this keyboard mouse. All right. So what we're going to do here is very simple. I'm going to go over the parts first. So what are we building today? We are building a AMD processor. Get all this out of the way. It's an AMD Ryzen 5, not flipped around, 8400F. This does not have onboard graphics because we're obviously putting a GPU in, so we will not need that. We will be running with this processor basically to, it's a pretty decent processor, it's pretty fast. It is the new socket, it is the new LGA socket. Motherboard itself is a GIGABYTE A620M S2H. This does have the flashback utility, or in other words, I think they call it GIGABYTE Plus or something. All right, doesn't matter. It does have it though. Hard drive, we have a 500 gigabyte drive because this machine is a workstation, so it doesn't require any more than that. It is a plus drive, so it is at 4,700 megabytes per second writes. Memory is going to be a DDR5 Corsair Ventus, only going to be 16 gigs because, again, this is a low-level workstation. It's perfectly fine for that. Graphic card is going to be a NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060, which is an MSI-branded Ventus 2X. It's good enough for what we need to do. It will run what the customer needs to run in an efficient manner. Put that off. Power supply itself is a Thermaltake. This is a little bit different from what we normally do. Is the Thermaltake 80 plus bronze. This is a little higher end power supply from Thermaltake. It's a 650 watt. You should be able to run that graphic card with no issue, including the entire system. We are going to be using the cooler that came with the processor. We're going to use the stock cooler. We will be using that through this process. We're not going to use any custom coolers this time around. Yeah, I didn't notice it was Friday the 13th until I said the date in my head, and yeah, so probably should have did a much more spookier thumbnail or something, black cats or something. All right, so we're going to build the system. We're going to build it out. We're going to actually start with the motherboard itself first. So what's in the box? Got obviously SATA cables. We're not going to utilize these today, so we're going to put those up to the side. Motherboard itself. Stupid I/O shield. And some manuals if you care for those. So we'll put those in there. Put this down. We're going to build on the box today. All right. Going to take the board out of the bag. Just a little word of advice, do not build on top of the bag, build on top of the box. The outside of this bag is not anti-static. It's only inside the bag that's anti-static. So you don't want to build on top of that. You may end up shocking your components, not realizing you did that. It's rare, but it happens. So, all right, let's go over some things for the motherboard itself. I'm gonna bring this a little closer. We're not gonna be able to see this once it gets in the case, so we're gonna go over all the motherboard features really quickly. The front end connectors, or in other words, front panel connectors, you have hard drive light, reset button, all that wonderful stuff, all down located here It is labeled very smallly on the board. If you can't see this, then you can obviously look it up in the manual. It's a little bigger in the manual. If you have a system fan, you'll be plugging that directly into here. USB, obviously any USB front panel connectors, these are the 2.0 connectors we plugged in there. 3.0 connectors on the side of the board, so they'll plug in straight through there. If you have a TPM module, you can plug that in there. If you have LED lights, you can use those. We are not doing any of that stuff, but if you do, they are available. Front panel audio, if you really want crappy audio, you can plug that in. Or if you just need audio to just work for like a headset or something, it's fine. Moving further up, SATA connections, which we're not going to be using today, but if you want to add any SATA hard drives, you have ability to add 4. Another system fan connector, which is 4 pin, but you can plug a 3-pin into it. Any of those 4-pin, you can plug a 3-pin into. Regular 24-pin connection for the power supply, which goes right here. It has a lip on this side, which is where the clip will go when we go to plug it in. Further up, we have the CPU fan. It is labeled CPU fan. It is also gray, so you know that that's the one for the CPU fan. Moving over further, you're going to have the ATX 12 volts connection, which is obviously your CPU connection. It'll be labeled CPU on your power supply. You'll plug that in here. And again, the clip will go onto this little ledge. RAM-wise, you're going to have 2 sockets on this board. If you have 4, you can install all 4, or you can install just 2. If you do 2, make sure that they are in dual channel mode. They will be labeled here down on the board. It will say DDR5 A1 B1. Now if you're doing if you have 4 sockets, it'll probably be A1 A1 B1 B1, or A1 A2 B1 B2. Just make sure you follow whatever is there. If you're not sure, look up the motherboard manual. It'll definitely tell you which one will put you into dual channel mode. Your CPU sockets here. It also has these little retention clips there that we're going to take these off because we don't need those. And we're going to use the stock cooler, which will screw right into the back plate of the board. Moving also down here, you're also going to have your NVMe socket. This is where you're going to be plugging in your NVMe hard drive. It is toolless, so it has a little plug. You just pull the plug out and you pop that in and you'll push it down, which I'll show very shortly. PCI Express lanes and PCI Express, not lanes, I'm sorry, PCI Express sockets. You got, obviously, I think you have a 4 socket. Can be a 4 socket. So right here is 4 or 1, depending upon what you're putting into there. Your graphic card itself will go into this socket here. I'm going to push this down so it's in the open position. When we go to put the graphic card in, it will click back into a lock position. So we're going to open that right now just so we have it ready for the graphic card to be installed. This is a little easier to also pop out the graphic card. So if you have your graphic card in here, you can push down on this little lever to unlock it before you can take the card back out. So just if you have to actually reposition your graphic card or swap your graphic card, be sure to push that lever down. You can ruin your motherboard if you try to pull that out without unlocking it first. That's it for this board. Let me also turn it around just to show I/O really quick. Hopefully we can get a little, there we go. So if you have onboard video, it will work with your VGA. You have DisplayPort and HDMI. I'll put this down here. DisplayPort, HDMI. You have USB 3.2, USB 2.0, and I think these are also USB 2.0. You also have a PS2 port if you need to use that. Ethernet, which is 1 gigabit Ethernet, as well as your audio for going out. Green is usually the one that you would normally plug it into, unless you have 5-port audio or 5.1 audio or anything like that higher, then you would want to look at the manual and see which way you got to plug that into. Oh, Qflash is also over here. This is the Qflash button. So we're going to probably use that to flash the board. And you will also need to install it into the one that says BIOS, which I think is the upper one over here. But you just check the I/O shield. It'll tell you which one says BIOS. Of course, they're starting up. Someone's cutting grass. So hopefully you guys don't hear that. All right. That's basically it for the board. So let's start putting things on the board and start assembling everything. We're going to assemble all outside the case pretty much until we get to putting it inside the case. And in that case, we're ready to go. That's all the cases. All right, let's do RAM first, just to get it out of the way. So it's a good shot of all that. Oh, thank you. The camera's been working a lot better. This camera actually has autofocus built into it, so that's why you see it hunting around a little bit. If it does that a lot, just let me know. I mean, it's going to probably do it a little bit because obviously I have to go between different surfaces, but I'll try to stay on something longer enough so that you guys can see it clearly. All right, plastic we're going to remove. You're going to just check the RAM itself. The RAM itself sometimes has a little piece of plastic here. If it does, take it off. The Vengeance one for the DDR5 does not. So if you look on the back and the front, it is pretty clear. Now what you're going to look at is the notch here. This notch is obviously a little bit more towards one direction than the other. So you're going to match that up on the motherboard and you're going to put it into the socket that way. So I'm going to probably do it wrong the first time and maybe have to flip it over. Nope, got it right the first time. Okay, so just plug it in. And you do the same thing with the second stick. Okay. That's it for RAM installation. You should hear the little clicks of the socket here. That's to hold it in place. If you want to take a piece of RAM out, you would obviously push down on the RAM socket little holder, and it will push it up out of the socket for you, and you'll be able to take it out of the socket. So, but you'll have to push on both sides for this one. Some of them only have one-sided clips. If they only have one-sided clips, then you won't be able to push it. You only have to be able to push on one side, it'll pop out. Let's put the NVMe in really quick. This order really doesn't matter too much as long as you put them in. It really doesn't matter which way it goes. Box we don't need. All right, so the NVMe drive itself is going to come with a little extra screw. We're not going to utilize that, but we do need the drive itself in a clamshell. So we're going to take this out carefully so we don't ruin the screw. Put that back down there. All right. The NVMe itself is about the size of a stick of gum. This is the Crucial P3 Plus. It's going to be your hard drive. This is obviously the side that has the connectors. That's going to go into the socket side here, and then that's going to go over the other way. So I'm going to flip it around the right way. And it's going to go on a 45-degree angle into the socket. Also switch this around so it makes sense. On a 45-degree angle, the drive is going to go into the socket. You shouldn't be able to see the gold pins anymore. And then you're going to push it down flat. And you're going to push the little retention clip onto there, and it should hold the drive. Now, it's going to be flat, but it's going to be flat to wherever you just plug this into. It's not going to be flat to the motherboard. You're going to have obviously some room between the NVMe drive and the actual motherboard. This is on purpose. This is to get airflow underneath the NVMe drive. This is normal. These drives do get pretty hot, so you do need some sort of cooling in there, and that's pretty much the only cooling that it gets. Some NVMe drives do have a heat sink. This has like just a sticker on here that's kind of like heat envelope for it, but if you do have one that has a heat sink, make sure to take off the little protector between the heat sink itself and the actual drive itself. Sometimes you might have to take the sticker off, or you may have to take the little, it's like a thermal pad. That thermal pad has to be attached directly to the chips at that point, so it's able to dispense heat. So sometimes it's already built in. Most of them are right now built in, so you don't have to really worry about it. But you know, if your drive doesn't have it that way, then you'll need to address that. All right, so we're gonna go up to the CPU, but I'm gonna take these off the socket really quickly first, because I already know we're not gonna use these, so unscrew that. These lift right out. And now you're down to the socket itself with the back plate with the screws on the back side. That's going to be for the stock cooler. The stock cooler requires that. Some third-party coolers do not require that, or they may require these little retention clips. That's why they come with them. But normally, it's usually without the use of these. So we can just put those off to the side and throw those out. We're going to put in the CPU at this point. So let's open up the box for the CPU. Inside the box, you get a few things. Obviously, you get your CPU in there and a clamshell. A little bit of a manual, which we're not going to use. A little bit of plastic to hold all that together, which don't need. Some advertisement. And you also get your stock cooler. Put the stock cooler off to the side for right now. We're going to put the processor in first. So at this point, what we're going to have to do is open up the actual socket. To do that, you're going to push down on the retention arm, push up, allow it to go all the way back so it clears this little section here, and they're able to pull the socket open. And when it's open, there's a little arrow that indicates which way the CPU goes, which is the upper corner. This one happens to be upper left corner, or my upper left corner, might be camera right. So that's where you're going to put your processor, and you're going to match that little golden arrow to the little silver arrow that's down on the board. Now you've got to be very careful here, because obviously when this socket is open, you could damage these pins. These pins are very, very sensitive, so be sure not to touch them. And what you want to do is you want to take the CPU from its sides. From the bottom of the CPU, you'll notice that there are a lot of pads. These pads will touch those pins and will make contact. We're going to put that downwards like this, and we're going to put the arrow to the same matching upper arrow to the left, and we're going to drop it into the socket. Not too far up, we're just going to gently put it in. I say drop, but it's, you don't want to keep touching the socket, so that's as gentle as you can get, pretty much. Clamshell you're done with. What we're going to do is now we're going to put down the cover. The plastic cover should pop off when you push down the retention, and the retention arm obviously goes all the way down and underneath the little hook. This you will keep just in case. This is just basically to cover this socket. So if your motherboard is bad, you want to hold on to this just long enough so that if your motherboard's bad, you can return it and you can put this back in place so you don't end up damaging the board back in shipping. So just hold on to this until you've got your system booted. Just keep it off to the side. We're going to put now the heatsink and fan on. In the box with the heatsink and fan is obviously just the heatsink and fan. It's nothing really different. It does have pre-applied thermal paste on the bottom, which is that gray that's down there. If you guys can see that, this little bit of gray. I'm not going to touch it because obviously it's pre-applied and it will move when I go to touch it, so I don't want to do that. It's already pre-applied, nicely thin. You shouldn't have to reapply any thermal paste. At this point, that thermal paste should last a good few years before you have to reapply it. Unless your system runs 24/7. If it does run 24/7, you may want to check it like 2 years in just to make sure everything is still good. Or if you're getting high temps, you may want to check it at that time and reapply new thermal paste and remove this thermal paste. We have other videos on how to remove thermal paste as well as reapply a new one. So if you want to check that out, you can check that out on our YouTube channel. And it does go over everything about reapplying thermal paste, adding new thermal paste, making sure that you don't mix and match thermal paste. Now to put this on is really simple. You're going to line these screws up here with the screws that are down on the board. And you're going to plug in the CPU fan into the CPU fan header. Just put this in place. And when you screw this in, you're going to screw in this side, then you're going to go to the opposite side corner, and then you're going to go to this side, and then that side corner. You're doing this so that it basically keeps even pressure as you push down. You don't want to bottom out. You just want to get enough on there so that it catches. Now that it's all caught down, now you've got kind of even pressure. Now you can go and actually bottom it out. Again, going the same direction as we were going before to kind of give even pressure all the way around. You'll also notice that when I'm using this, if you're using a regular screwdriver, you just tighten it down until it doesn't turn anymore and you don't break it. I'm on 17 on this. It obviously allows a kickback to make sure that it doesn't go over that type of pressure or torque. So you don't want to over torque this. You want it to go to a certain percentage. Now we're going to take the 4-pin connector. We're going to obviously connect it directly to the board. Once that's connected in, you can tuck the cable. I usually tuck the cable underneath the fan a little bit, so it's away from the fan blades itself, but it's also just away from everything else. It's a little easier to do it now before you get into the case a little later. This is vibrating a little bit, sorry. Okay. All right. That's it for the motherboard. Pretty simple. That's a lot of stuff I know in one little bit of tidbit there, but I know that it's not that hard if you guys just follow straight through, follow the straight directions. You should have really no issue here. We're going to get on to the case. I'm going to put that I/O shield in. I'm not going to forget it this time, because every time I forget it, it just takes longer to fix it. So I'm going to toss these out of the way. I'm going to toss the cover just for the hell of it. It's going to be over there. All right, going to take this off. Case-wise, we've got a Thermaltake H17. I already took it out of the box. It's ready to go. Sorry you guys aren't going to see much until I take the side panels off. The overhead is a little too close for this. I'm going to use my screw tray. We're just going to put all the extra screws in there. I say extra, but they're not extra. Needed screws, let's put it that way. That's probably better off. Okay. Side panel comes off. Other side panel comes off. Okay. Once you got the panels off, you want to go to the back of the unit first. And you want to untie this so you can get all the extra screws that we need for installing all the rest of the stuff. So I'm just going to untie the front panel connectors. Take that off. Inside the bag, we get a few things. We obviously get some cable ties. These cable ties are nice. They actually do tie up the cables really nicely, so we're going to use these when we're ready to tie up cables. We can put that off to the side here. Screws, they come with a whole bunch of different screws that's nicely labeled, so you should be able to figure all that out. I'm just going to go over them really quick. First of all, it comes with a speaker. This we can toss away unless you want to try to put this on there. This can go on the front. This goes by the front panel connectors if you want the speaker to like make a beeping sound when the system boots up. We're not going to put this in because it gets annoying and it sounds horrible. Everything's labeled on Thermaltake, which is nice. It says used for 3.5-inch hard drive. These are actually, we're not going to use these because obviously we don't have a 3.5-inch hard drive, but we'll put it off to the side. We will include it for the customer, so we have them ready to go. Same thing here for the 2.5-inch. We're 2.5-inch SSD drives. We don't have any of those, so I'm just going to put that off to the side. Next thing is all the motherboard screws. Now this one's not labeled, but it's kind of common sense because it's the only one left. So I'm just going to put that right here, and we're going to dump all these screws out. We'll go over the screws really fast. Comes with a bunch of different types of things. Comes with a motherboard standoff, extra motherboard standoff if you want to use that. We may or may not end up using that, depending upon what is already put down on the board on the other side. Other thing is this is a motherboard screw. It's very small. It's very thin. This is a very thin type, same thing. They're very thin motherboard screws. Those are the ones that you want to use for that. I could tell you your exact measurements if you really wanted to, but I think most people would probably not know and really don't have a way of telling unless you look at it. So this is also, this type of screw is usually for a graphic card or a power supply. Power supply comes with screws, so we're going to use those, but these are extra. Another thing it comes with are some case screws, fan case screws. These are for any type of fan case that you want to put in there. You can put those on. Most fans that you buy usually come with these, but again, it's good to have some extra. And that's it. Very simple. And they also have the thumb screws. The thumb screws are for the case cover. If you lose the thumb screws, you can actually use one of the ones like this to actually close the case too. So that's an extra one for that, just in case you lose the other one. You just use a regular screw. Or if you just don't want to use thumb screws, you can just replace them, all four of them, with the other ones. Front panel connectors, obviously everything right here, we're going to have HD audio. They're all labeled. USB is USB 2.0. This is USB 3.0. It's the blue one with more pins, and it has a notch, so it only goes one way. All these connectors you really shouldn't have to force on or anything. Everything that's here is also labeled for like power switch, labeled. And it's this one, obviously, any switch doesn't require plus negative. That's why it's not labeled for plus negative. You can plug this in any direction will work. The ones that are LEDs, like the HDD LED, that is labeled and it has a positive negative. So this side is positive, that side's negative. You'll want to make sure to put positive, positive, negative to negative, or the LED will not work. Same thing for power LED, it has positive and negative. I don't know if it has a reset. Does it have a reset? It has a reset switch. So a reset switch that is available. Not every case has every button. And that's power switch, okay. We're gonna put this off to the side for right now. And we're gonna do the motherboard first, and then we're gonna do the power supply second. Power supply goes actually here, which is on the opposite side of the case. So I'm just gonna show you where it is, but we'll do that again in a few minutes when we go to actually do that. Let's put these cables down and out of the way so we don't crunch them. I'll flip the case back over to the other side where we're gonna put the motherboard in. Okay. So putting the motherboard in, you're going to look at the standoffs and see which ones you're going to go with. It does tell you down here, very short, small lettering. It does say mini ITX, micro ATX. Micro ATX is labeled 2, so everything that's marked 2 should be the ones that are filled in for micro ATX. Now, there's only one standoff that is weird, which is this one here, which says 2 here and 2 here. Not both of these will be in place, but it's only one or the other. But it depends on your motherboard, and we're going to check the motherboard really quickly to see if it's correct. Now this motherboard has it in line with this one over here. So over here, this one is lined up with this one. It's not out of alignment. So this has to be in alignment with this one up here, so it needs to be moved up one. So we're going to move it over one, up one. And to move it over one, up one, we're just going to use a quick we're going to use just basically one of these. Let's make sure it fits. It does. Okay. Now you could use a pair of pliers if you have a pair of pliers, but just be careful not to scratch your case. I'm using this because I don't want to scratch the case, and I already have one. But if you don't have one, you can always use a pair of pliers to take this out and move it up one little screw hole. Now, why am I moving it up one little screw hole? Because it only aligns with that part of the motherboard. You do not want to have extra standoffs under the board at all. They should all be screwed down. If they're not all screwed down, you could cause a short on the motherboard, and that'll be a very bad day for you. So don't do that. Make sure that everything is accounted for. So if you have 6 screws and 6 standoffs, they're perfectly set. If you have 5 screws and 6 standoffs underneath, then you know there's something wrong, and therefore take your motherboard back out and check everything before you boot it up. We're going to put the I/O shield in because I'm not going to forget it this time. Stupid I/O shield. Ugh. Anybody else hate I/O shields? These things are so useless. They're sharp, they're useless. Alright, they're not useless, they label stuff. Alright, so on the I/O shield itself, they are labeled. They do tell you what everything is. Obviously your USB, a BIOS one that says BIOS. That's the one that we're going to use for Qflash-plus, sorry. It's not just Qflash. You got your PS2 port, your VGA ports, your Qflash button, USB ports, display port, HDMI, Ethernet, as well as USB and some audio. The audio does explain kind of, it does say line in, line out mic. Line out is obviously your speakers, so that's the green port. If your I/O shield has any type of like little plastic, like metal tongues on them, just push the tongues up and out of the way. If this one doesn't, so we're just going to install it. It should install to the back part of the case. should only go one way. It should go the right way. If you have it the wrong way, flip it over. Push it in place. Just be careful because they are sharp. So if it is a little sharp, just don't want to cut your finger on it. That would be a really bad day. So just don't cut your finger on that. So it's sharp. If it's very sharp, it usually cuts without you feeling it. It's kind of like a little pinch, and you'll end up bleeding all over the place on your brand new case, which is bad. So let's put the motherboard in. We got the standoffs done. We got the I/O shield in. We're gonna pop the board in. To pop the board in, it's very simple. Bad days aren't good, but today is Friday the 13th. Yeah, well, I don't know. Is Friday the 13th really considered a bad day? I mean, it could be bad for some people. Some other people might not be. All right. Putting this back in place, you're just going to slide the motherboard in, and it's going to latch onto these little standoffs. That just makes it a little easier so that you can put the screws in. If you hear it click in place, you should be able to hear it click a little bit, and you should be able to see all the black standoffs underneath. Now again, just count out your screws. Count the screws. If you have 6 and 6 standoffs, you're good to go. If you have 5 screws and 6 standoffs, take the motherboard back out. You obviously missed one, or maybe one's not needed under a certain area. I always go for this screw first, just to get it going. And it will eventually go. There we go. Why is this not staying? Wait a minute. I usually do this screw first just because it holds the board really well in place. And then I just go around the board, repeating this step for every other screw. Again, count them. Make sure you have everything proper. You don't want to turn the motherboard on and have a standoff underneath that doesn't belong. The problem with that is also sometimes it may work for a while until it hits a bump or something, and then then shorts it out later, and you'll find out the hard way that you shorted out your board, and it may be out of warranty by then, and that's bad too. So. If this is your first time building, don't use an electric screwdriver. I've built 1.5 billion of these machines, it feels like. So, I know when to stop pushing the button. I also have it on a click back system. That's why you're hearing that little noise. That clicks back to let me know that, okay, it's all the way torqued down. But, if you want to avoid all of that, you could just use a regular screwdriver, and you don't need an expensive screwdriver. Any Phillips screwdriver will work. You don't need like $1 billion screwdriver for this to work. You just need a screwdriver that fits. I would also recommend a screwdriver that has a little bit longer of a bit here, just so that you have a little more room to screw in. Because things like over here, this area, is a little hard to turn without hitting into this metal piece here, or it might have to go on an angle, which is no good. You don't want to go on angles on things. You want to make sure that they're kind of straight in. All right. This case actually comes with a case fan, so we're going to connect that case fan really quick. Just to get it out of the way and so Brian doesn't forget. And I need to find power. Okay. Is there one up here? No. They put them all in the front because most people usually put the case fans in the front, which makes sense. But we have one for exhaust, and I don't really want to move that because it's perfectly fine where it is. So we're going to do the system case fan one that's way down here on this side. This is a 3-pin, so it's only going to plug in. It's going to have 1 pin missing. That's fine. You don't need that last pin. It just makes the fan run a little harder, is really what the short version of that is, without that 4th pin. But that's okay. It still runs with, adjusted power. It's just not fluctuated enough for that. Now this is going to go, I hate this. I hate the way this is positioned. Because it's going to go now underneath the graphic card, which I really don't like doing. Because I think that graphic card is a little longer. All right. Cable management, which I really can't stand half the time. Just think of it as a better way to do this. There might be a better way to go back and around and up and around and come back on this side. But I don't know if the cable's long enough to do that. I doubt it. Let me see. Actually, it goes all the way to the edge of this case. It may work. I may be able to go up, back, down, and then come back over here. So I'd go up through this hole, back around, and then come back around here just to avoid the graphic card, which seems like a lot of extra work for no reason. It's a reason. There is a reason. It has to look good. And I don't like... It'll bother me if it's not done. All right, let's see if it goes. If it goes, great. If it doesn't go, then we'll have to figure something else out. Maybe we'll put it in the front of the case. It doesn't really matter too much. Yeah, that's not going to reach. No, not going to reach. Okay. Just did a quick test. That's not going to reach. Okay, so for now purposes, let's plug this in. But I really think I want to kind of go the other way. So let me plug it in over here, though, where it's going to actually go. For now. Just going to hide that up there. That's not going to stay that way. What I want to do is I'm going to put this in the front part of the case and mount that in the front part of the case. Instead of an exhaust, we'll have an intake. Or we could do an exhaust on the top. That'll make it a little bit less... I think that's bigger than the top one. Probably do front. I like doing more intake anyway. I really don't like doing mostly exhaust. I prefer more intake because the cold air gets in there quicker and you end up with lower temps than actually having too much exhaust. Plus you have better positive airflow. So, you know, that's always a better solution. But for now purposes, let's just do that because I have to unscrew all of this, take this whole panel off, and that's just not going to be fun. But it needs to be done. All right. All right, let's get the graphic card. Oh, let's get the front panel connectors on, and then we'll do the graphic card and we'll do the power supply. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this back over for momentarily. Okay. We're going to separate out these front panel connectors from thin wires, from thick wires. Thin wires go one direction, thick wires go a different direction. We're going to tie these up really quick with the ties that they gave us, which I put over here. And we're going to tie that straight down to here. To get these under the little anchor points, you may want to bend the tail up a little bit and put the tail through first, and then pull everything tight. I'm doing a little bit of cable management right now because obviously without this cable management, you're going to end up with a lot more of a mess. So I'm just going to obviously do a little bit of cable management. I'm not going crazy because I want to pull everything tight after I'm done. But what I'm going to do here is this is going to be right here, and then I'm going to go circle down and put it where the motherboard actually comes up on. If you're building this for the first time again, put the computer case upright. I'm doing this for the camera, but it's easier if you can see both sides of the case to know which hole you're going to be putting this into. You know, you don't want to go putting something in a hole without looking. Wink, wink. All right, so anyway, put that across, and you will also do all of the other cables like your HD audio, your USB, and your USB 2.0 as well as your HD audio. So HD audio is actually more up in the front over here, so it's going to go into this secondary hole here. This one goes, this is USB 2.0, which goes with the front panel, I think, and USB 3.0, which I think is at the bottom over here, so it's going to go there. And let's plug these all in, but we're going to also do the power supply and everything else. So, but let's just push that over, hold it down if you're going to be using it this way and flipping around. Okay. All the cables should be close to where you need them. Okay, HDMI 3.0, not HDMI, I'm sorry. USB 3.0 is going right here. It's on the side of the board, so you just put the notch on the upwards and plug it straight into the ports. without breaking anything. Hopefully, there we go. We're gonna pull all the slack back, so don't worry about the slack. Just leave the slack where it is. And we'll move on and we'll come back to that shortly. Let's get all the front panel connectors in. It's a little hard to see on camera, so I'm just gonna kind of plug them in the way they are supposed to be, matching up power switch to power switch, reset to reset, etc. Power switch. The only ones that matter on the direction are the ones that are, obviously the LEDs are the ones that are required to be one direction. Reset switch and power switch are not required. Any direction is fine. They will work either way. But your hard drive light needs to match positive, positive, negative to negative. Same thing for your power light. Positive, positive, negative to negative. And if I could see what I'm doing, make sure I get that right. Yes, I do. Tuck that in there for now, just to get it out of my way. And we're going to do the USB 2.0. Again, it's labeled USB, and it goes into the header, says F USB 1 for front USB 1. It could also go into F USB 2. It really doesn't matter which one you plug it into. It will work. If you have more than that on there, you just plug in the next one. HD audio, same thing. It's all blocked out, so there's only one way to plug it in. If you are pushing too hard and you're bending pins, you're obviously doing it wrong. Do not continuously do that. Flip it over, maybe you got the wrong direction. Power supply. Let's do the power supply. I'm saving graphic card for last, and that's on purpose, because once I put this graphic card in, you're not going to be able to access a lot of this stuff pretty easily. You'll have to take the graphic card back out. That's why I'm doing it last. It doesn't really matter too much. I mean, you could do it first, but you're going to have a lot more problems trying to get it, and you'll end up taking it back out probably to reach all of this stuff down here. I'm going to also pull all these cables back when we're done, when we're ready for a little more tie-up. We're going to also do the tie-up before we do the graphic card, because it's best to kind of like continuously tie as you go. It makes your life a little easier than having to like do it at the last minute and try to rearrange all the wires. It'll be unplugging and plugging stuff back in constantly if you wait till the last minute. If you're unsure about your cable tying, again, the cable tying is for you. You know what I mean? Like it makes it just easier for maintenance and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to keep the dust out of the system and stuff like that. That's why you do this. It's not because of looks. Obviously, this has got a solid case cover. There's no looks for this. This is literally just for our technicians to make it easier for us to like clean the system, prep the system, make sure that no wires get jammed into any fans and stuff like that. Power supply does come with a manual. If you want to, you can read it. We're going to skip it. It does come with some straps as well as some screws, which we're going to use those. We'll put that off to the side. Power supply also comes with your power cord. You obviously need that, so put that off to the power side. By the way, try to keep your power cord matched with your power supply. Don't reuse your power cord if you decide to upgrade your power supply, because these cords are rated for this power supply. So X amount of watts can go through this cord with no problem. If you go and switch your power supply out to a higher power supply, in other words, a lot more wattage, you should switch this out as well. You don't want that going on fire because it will heat up, and it is a cord that is handling a lot of power. So inside, you're going to get your power supply itself, a little packet of treats. Okay, that's silicone. It's not really treats. But you just take that, throw that out. And you get your box, which you don't need. Power supply itself is wrapped in a little bit of plastic. You just take that out, off the plastic, nothing big deal. This power supply is not modular. As you can tell, all the wires are in the power supply itself. There are no sockets here. So it is a very simple install. All the wires will be inside, so you shouldn't have any problem. Now, on the power supply itself, this Thermaltake, they put a piece of plastic on here that drives me nuts. It's so hard to peel off. But peel this piece of junk off. You don't want that sitting on your power supply. That's going to get hot and may flake off into something else, so just take it off. This has a fan on it. The fan's on the bottom. So the fan's going to, I'm going to have this fan facing the bottom because we have a 2 compartment on this one. So the actual, there's an intake from the bottom. I'm just going to put it through the bottom so it separates the airflow a little bit. I like that better because the temperatures are handled a little bit better. It won't put the heat directly into the system. It'll take air from cold, fresh air directly into the power supply and exhaust it right out through the back, not going through the whole system. So it does add a little bit better protection against other problems. Let me go over the power supply connectors before I put everything in, because once I put this in, it's a little harder to see. Obviously, it's got these metal ties. Do not put these in your system. They have metal in them and they could grind against something. So again, use the plastic ones only. It's fine, you know, just it's a few cents for more plastic ties than it is to deal with a system that's messed up. So power supply is labeled. You'll see PCIe. This is for your graphic card, anything that's PCI Express or your graphic card. It does have 8 pins total. It has 6 plus a 2. If you have to plug in all 8 pins, just make sure it is under the notch before you install it. Same thing for this cable. It's just another braced off cable. You can use the same thing on the same channel. It really doesn't matter. Now, going down to this, the CPU one is kind of looks like the PCI Express one. So it is still 8 pins. Do not get these confused. Be sure that the CPU one goes down to the motherboard. Do not plug the PCI Express one into the motherboard. That would be a bad problem. You get too much voltage. So moving on, 24 pin. 24 pin is only one that's 24 pin. It's very big. It only fits one way. It's got a little clippy thing that's going to go on that ledge and click in when we go to put it in. So that's all you need to know about that. SATA. We got a lot of SATA connections on this power supply. We don't have, it's kind of a shame because we don't have anything that has SATA. But if you have a SATA, you'll be able to plug this in and you'll have a little notch here to determine which way it goes. It's keyed out. It should slide in pretty easily. These are a little harder to push in, but they're not that hard. You shouldn't have to like force it. Be very careful still. If you do have a SATA hard drive, you don't want to pull the power off the drive or anything. So just be kind of careful. Push it in the right way. Shouldn't have any issues. Molex connectors. These are for a little older devices, like for older fans or RGB lighting and stuff like that. We're not using them today, but they are there. Same thing with this. There's a floppy connector from like really, really old. Probably you guys probably have no idea what a floppy connector is. So long story short, though, it's mostly used for tape drives nowadays. If you actually have a tape drive, again, something probably you wouldn't use in the system, but it's there. It's available. I don't think I've ever seen any RGB connections use this 4-pin connector. It's kind of crap. It's been like really outdated. Surprised it's still on a power supply. And everything else is just a copy of that. There's just more options available to you. So we're going to put this in. We're going to take these all up. The cables on this power supply are extremely long. That's really good for this case because this case is a little bit bigger than most. No, it's not bigger than most cases, but it's big enough to fit a lot of stuff. And you'll want to have a little extra room just in case you want to move something around or connect something. You're not going to be like really pushing it really hard to get cables in places. It won't be really tight. Until you tie everything up, then it should be. All right, so down below, this is tilted a little bit, but this is below the case, opposite side. This is the feet, this is the top. So just to let you know what's going on. There is a vent down at the bottom. I'm going to put this down towards the bottom. Now, little heater warning here. If you have carpet, this is a bad idea. Because if you have carpet, you're going to put this on carpet, it's going to be suffocating it. And the power supply is going to get really hot. So even with these feet give you a little decent amount of room. But honestly, if you're going to put this on carpet, just maybe put it on a stand or something so it's up a little bit off the carpet. If you are going to put it on the floor, you shouldn't put your computer on the floor. But we all know we're always short for space, so I'm not going to judge. But if you're going to put it on the floor, if you have carpet, turn the power supply the opposite way, which is upwards. Or if you want to still put it downwards, then just put it on a piece of wood or something so that there's a little bit of space between the carpet and the bottom of this unit. So it's a little off the floor. It doesn't need to be like 50 feet off the floor. It just needs to be enough so that there's enough clearance for air to get underneath there and it doesn't get hot. So, and it's not that much. So And we're going to put it downwards, and we'll of course always warn the customer not to put it on the carpet. So the power supply itself, the power button, all that stuff is going to go to the outside of the case on this side here. So you're going to see it come out this side, and we're going to screw it in from the outside of the case. So it's going to slide down, hopefully not ruining any cables or getting caught on anything. It's going to get caught on everything. By the way, this is a lot easier to install if the system's in the upright position. You're not fighting gravity like I'm fighting right now. So you may want to put this upright when you go to do this so that you don't have to worry about like fighting gravity. Like I'm going to have to move this into position, so it's going to be a little more complicated. But I like to do this because if I put this case upwards, you guys aren't going to see anything. So not that you're going to see much anyway because it's just 4 screws. 4 screws to the back. They only line up one way. They should only line up one way. You'll line up with the holes that obviously pertain to having the fan downwards. If you have the fan upwards, it'll be 4 different holes because they're obviously these 4 holes are moved differently. But you can put the power supply either way. This case does have the 4 holes both directions, which is nice. So we're just going to move this up a little bit, get it in line. Hopefully get it screwed in correctly. Yes. Okay. Again, you may want to put the case upwards to install this. It is easier. Once you get all 4 screws in, that's when you can tighten it down, just so that you don't, if you have a little bit of wiggle room there, just in case one screw hole is not perfectly lined up or something, you can easily get to it. It shouldn't be a problem though. I haven't had an issue, but you never know. Just going to clear off the desk a little bit so I don't have so much on here. Okay, we're going to take the cables down and we're going to take the 24 pin. Got to untangle it first because it's always tangled up in everything else. So just untangle that, and we're going to put it to the spot where it's going to go, which is the second hole up here, the first hole up there, whatever. It's a little bit further up than the other hole. And you're going to also put in the CPU one. I'm going to separate the CPU. The only problem with this power supply, you'll see that they have these little slices in the power, and it's to make it easier to run cables, but it's really a pain if they get tangled up because then now they're tangled within each other, and that's the problem. So be sure to untangle anything you can, and be sure the cables are just separate and out from all the rest of the cables. That's how you know. This one's also labeled CPU. Which way is the David Graham says, which way is the fan facing? Mine is facing down. So it's facing the bottom of the case for the power supply. And that's pulling air from the bottom of the case and then exporting it out through the back. Exhausting, I'm sorry. Exhausting it out through the back. So it's coming in from the bottom and then exhausting out the back. So it's actually its own little chamber. It's like it's a little air chamber here. Hopefully that helps. If you want, you could also put it the other way. Like I said, you can flip this over, and if you want to take the air from above this, you can do that. You don't have to take the air from the bottom of the case if you don't want to. So either way. CPU, by the way, is going to go in the upper right corner. Okay, good. Okay, you got it. All right. Upper right corner over here, so just pop that over. You're going to just push all of the cable out just so that you have it over there, so you can plug it in, but we're going to pull all that cable back when we're done. Now, the only other cable that we're going to need, maybe, which I'm going to check the graphic card if it actually needs power before I move all this stuff around. I'm going to take the 4060 out. Quickly check. I think this requires an 8 plug connector. By the way, if you're unsure, do what I'm doing right now, which is just take it out, The text on, oh yeah, David says the text on the power supply messed me up. Yeah, this is weird because it's on the opposite side of the case. Normally, if you flip this over, there's a little window on the other side. It's actually right side up, which is weird. Yeah, because we're on the back part of the case. Yeah, I can see how that can be a little confusing. All right, so let's check the graphic card. By the way, what's in the graphic card? It's just a graphic card and some foam and a small manual. Don't use the drivers if they do come with drivers. No, it doesn't come with drivers. But if it does come with drivers, grab the drivers from online because graphic cards change all the time and you want the newest driver. Oh, someone retracted a message. Okay. So let's check the graphic card really quickly. What we're looking for is the power. So we do have an 8 power plug. We're going to need that power cable to come through. Everything on this, we're just going to put this off to the side for right now. We'll explain it a little bit, but I just want to make sure that that's there and that we need to push through onto the other side. So I'm just going to put this back in its case. Actually, we don't need this. It's going to be a pain in the ass to get back out. Let's put it on top of the foam. There we go. Okay. So we need an 8 plug for the PCI Express. We're just going to find that. We only need 1, but there are 2 on the connector here. That's okay. We're just going to push it through so it's available, and everything else we're going to tie up a little bit so it's at least out of my way. This cable can be undone a little bit there. All right, so the PCI Express card goes about here, roundabout on the motherboard. Yeah, and how I know that is I'm looking at the back of the case and there's the sockets, so I can easily see where the sockets are, and it's about here. So I'm going to use this hole here to push this through, so it's at least close enough to where the PCI Express is. And I like to go from the bottom. I know some people like to go top. I don't think it makes much of a difference. I mean, in a case that's closed up like this, it really doesn't matter. If you're about looks, it's whatever you like better. I usually would go whichever way is the shortest so you don't see so much cable, but some people like to see the cables or they spend money on the extra cables to make them look nicer. If that's the case, then you can go in any hole. It doesn't make a difference. It'll just, look good. Danny. Ooh, I said that wrong. Danny Curlet, I'm going to screw that name up, sorry. Says, I bought 2 4060 16 gigabytes for $470. Okay. After people said it was too expensive and get it. Maybe I'm confused. Bought two 4060 16 gigabytes for $470. Oh, that's not bad for that price though. This is I think this is an 8 gig, and I think it was like 200 something. So that's not bad. 16 gig is not that bad. I think 4060 16 gig. I think that's the TI. If I may be wrong. For 470 is not bad. Was that 470 American? I assume. After people said it was too expensive and get a 3060. Well, a 40. Well, You're comparing 4060 to 30. I mean, 4060 is obviously newer. I don't know about game. I guess it really depends on your title too, because some of the 3060s actually I think were a little bit better on certain areas. I got the first 4070 with 6 times the memory, or 6x. Okay, and it's a great card. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with the 4070 is good too. 4070 is pretty decent. This is, you got to build for whatever you need. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't go anything more than what you need. And if you're unsure, keep your box, not the best way of doing things, but, if you don't like one card, keep the box, put it back in the box, return it, get a different card that matches your system a little bit better, maybe spend a little more money. Obviously, usually it's about cost, usually. I mean, unless you get that weird NVIDIA card that's just odd, the oddball out, but... any other cables? No, we don't need more cables. We're just going to take all the rest of this junk, all the rest of the power supply cables here, all the crap that we really are not using. I'm just going to ravel it up a little bit. So I'm just kind of like raveling it to make sense. And we're just going to flip that over this way. And I'm just going to tuck it down. Can't see that. I'm going to tuck it down here into the extra area here, but let me just tie it up. Proper cables. All right. I usually like to put 2 ties on this just because it's a lot of extra cable, and I kind of like to keep these things as flat as possible. The flatter you get this, the better off you are for cleaning purposes, because then you get less dust on things. You can just blow this out a lot quicker without like a nightmare of dust coming out. It doesn't grab onto so many dust bunnies and stuff like that. Tighter the cables are together. They're also easier to clean. You can just tap the cable and everything pops all over it. All right, so let's tuck this behind there just for now. We're gonna tie this down a little bit better a little later. We'll do that, but let's just get things working first, and then we'll worry about that. Oh, I got an extra tie, I didn't realize. A little tail I didn't cut. All right, so we're gonna flip it back over. We're gonna plug everything in, and then we're gonna do a little more cable management. I wanna switch that fan. I don't like where that fan is. I really hate where that fan is. It's just the way that the power on the fan is just not gonna really do any good. Push everything up, push all the cable up just so when I push it back down. By the way, this is a lot easier to work if you just had it standing up one way so you don't have to keep flipping things around. Again, this is only done for camera purposes. You really should do it the other way. Standing up is better. All right, just untwist that. Okay, there we go. So power, 24 pin, plug in first, just get it out of the way. Let's flip it around so it makes sense. Into the connector. Should hear a click once it's in. Same thing here. For the CPU, make sure it says CPU. Make sure they're all connected together, and it should just plug straight in to the port back there. There we go. Should click. You should hear a little small click. If you have it the wrong way, obviously it won't go in the socket because they're keyed out kind of. So you should, if you're forcing it, you'll know. This cable's for the PCI Express, so we're going to leave that a little alone. We're just going to push this out of our way for now. I really want to move that fan. I hate where that is. Okay. Oh, you know what? Let me get this cleared out of here. I'm going to pull this cable all the way up forward. I know this is way extra cable. We're not going to use all that cable. We're going to pull it back, but I want to get all the other cables pushed back so that it won't touch the graphic card. And I want to also make sure we're not going around something important. Just gonna push those cables down so they're going kind of back, out of the way, just tuck them down. The 4070 has 12 gigs of RAM? Oh, David Graham says, what's the cost of this build? All the parts are down below. They should be in the link. They should be all in the description. So they all should be on Newegg, so you should be able to just click through it and you can add it to a card to find out. I think, oh man, I have to double check what this came out to be. I think with the graphic card and everything, I think it's like a $500-600, but maybe it's $700 build. I think it's a $700 build. I have to double check. I have to double check to see what it is. That's with the operating. That's without the operating system and stuff like that. I'm not including that because it depends on the operating system what you want to use. But if you're including Windows, probably more like an $800 build if you're buying the legit OEM one. If you're buying an OEM one from a different manufacturer site, I can't tell you which one, but you can buy them somewhere else. You can do that too. You know, that's up to you. For Windows 11, of course, not 10. I'm going to take this metal piece out. This thing drives me nuts. It's just going to get in my way right now. We're going to put the graphic card in, and I think we have enough room at this point. Everything looks kind of nice. I'm going to take the 2 sockets out here, here, I mean, to grab that, put that graphic card in. So we're just going to take the 2 little blanks out. If I'm missing any parts in the description, let me know, because I do those things kind of in a rush, and sometimes I forget stuff. Well, I forgot one thing on one system, and it was kind of an important thing, so always correct me. It's okay. Plastic for the graphic card. Obviously, just take all this off. You don't want this on your graphic card. demo. Plastic, just rip all the plastic off. Be sure to just get every piece. You don't want to have any pieces flying around your case. Same thing for the back plate. Say back panel. Wow, I'm tired. There we go. So just take it off the back plate. Put that in here. The 4070 goes for 600. All right, and has 12 gigs of memory, and the new ones don't have 6 times the older one. Really? I gotta really check. I haven't been up on the new ones. I know the 5000 series is supposed to 5000, yeah, something like that. 5000 series is supposed to be coming out soon. I didn't really get the details on it. We kind of like stay back a little bit just because you always end up paying a premium for something that maybe might not be just as good as anything else. Graphic card, oh, take the plastic piece off, obviously, to expose the socket, well, the card piece. You want to just hold on to that just in case you want to return your card or anything, you might need that. For the front panel over here, for your connections to your screens, I'm going to pull all these out, but we actually keep these. We put them back in place, the ones that we are not going to be utilizing, just so that the customer doesn't get more dust in the unit. It kind of acts as like a good dust cover. Plus, if you only put the ones back in that the person already needs to use, they know where to plug it in. They don't get confused, So that does help a little bit. Also, it helps with the dust. It does keep the dust out a little more. We're gonna slide this in. Yeah. I'm gonna put this thing back in. Stupid black. I don't know why this thing is in here. It's kind of stupid. I feel like we may have to take it out because it might be too high of a card. No, it fits. All right. I was wrong. It fits. Okay, so I just got to find that socket. It's just further down. There we go. All right. This little cover is annoying. It's always annoying. There we go. David says, in short, the old or first, I say first, not the first 4070 is better than the newer 4070. The first 4070 is better than the older. Okay, so they make like a dumbed down card afterwards because they probably are like, oh, well, we want to make a saving card or whatever. It makes kind of sense. I mean, it's not a lot of sense, but it makes a little bit of sense. I mean, from a chip standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. But, yeah, I mean... Six times is the faster memory. Okay, so you're saying 6 times the memory speed. Okay, yeah, I mean that makes a real big difference, especially if you're gaming and stuff. That's definitely a big positive. You'll definitely get faster rendering or output. That probably could translate a little bit over to production if you're doing production work. Business stuff, like rendering graphics or, AutoCAD or something. It'll help a little bit. All right, that's in place. Okay. PCI Express, I'm gonna plug that in. All right, so I'm gonna plug this straight in, and it does require 8, so I'm gonna push these together. There's a little notch here. Make sure that notch is underneath before you plug it in so that everything sits nice and flush. And everything connects in without a problem. And you won't have any pinch connectors or anything like that. Of course, if I can see what I'm doing, it'd be even better. All right. Is this notch on this side? Yeah, notch is on this side. Go. Click it in, should click right in. And we're gonna pull up the excess back through that little hole down there and everything. I'm gonna just tie these together so it doesn't get caught on anything. Need a small tie. That's small, so kind of small. Push that back. All right. Okay. All right, so we're gonna go on the other side now. Everything's plugged in. We're ready to pull that excess cable back and tie everything down on the opposite side. I'm just gonna leave this up for a second so I can pull this cable down so I can see what I'm doing on both sides so that I can clear the graphic card, which I can. Okay, so that's good. It's more than enough. Okay. All right. So here comes the fun part. I say fun part, but it's not fun. So we got to tie down everything. So at this point, we're going to tie down all the loose cables. I usually like to do a flow pattern, like just, you know, like lines going straight down as much as I can, because it already has kind of a flow pattern for it. So we're just going to tie to all these little anchor points anywhere that we could possibly do in kind of like a straight down or straight over pattern. That makes it a little bit easier so you don't have to eliminate like, oh, did I do this right or wrong? It really doesn't matter too much. It just matters enough that the cables are in the close to the correct position. USB 3.0 connection is always a pain, so I'm just going to pull that back out this way. I'm going to double over this, tie all these together. This one's already tied down to an anchor point, so it should be fine. If you're going to install SSDs, be sure to do your SSDs first, because obviously you're going to need these little holes to be cleared so you can screw in the SSDs. So sometimes you may have to do that first. If you do add one later, it's not that big of a deal. You may have to cut a connection here, like cut a cable tie or two to make it work, but most of the time it should be fine. I'm probably being overkill on this. That's there, that's fine. Again, no one's going to really see this but you, so you can even skip this part if you wanted to. It's just, you know, if you start to hear weird sounds coming from your system, then most likely you've got something stuck on a fan or something like that. So you might want to go back in and just push the cables around so they're not on the fan, or tie them back a little bit for wherever the fan is. You don't have to go to this length of cable tying. You don't need to go crazy. These cables need to be pulled back. And be gentle by pulling the cables back. If they get stuck, then you know that, you know, go back in there and just quickly take a look, see what it's stuck on. Okay, push that down. I'm going to use this space where there's a space at the bottom here. I like to throw as much cable room in there as much as possible. I'm also going to throw in the bags. I usually take these bags, I pop a little hole in them, and I push the, because they're already like pre-bagged also on top of that. So I'll put it through the zip part of the bag, put a little hole, pop the zip tie through it, and I'll zip tie it to the bottom of the case because there's some holes that I can attach to. I put this in there on purpose because customers lose this stuff all the time. I'll be honest, everybody that we hand a bag to that we are like, oh, don't lose that bag and, you know, keep it with your system, they lose it and then we can't mount a hard drive later because we're missing screws. So this way, at least it's inside the case, it's ready to go, and you know, if one of our technicians come by to visit to install a case or install an SSD or a hard drive, we already have the cable, we have the screws, we have everything all inside the case. They can just go in there, grab what they need to grab, and put back what they need to put back later. All right, so next on this side, we're going to take over here, we're just going to pull back all the extra, and we're going to just mount it down to these anchor points in the top. These are a little harder, so I'm just going to bend the tail. Don't be afraid to bend the tail to get it through, because you're going to cut the tail off anyway. So it really doesn't matter. I don't cable manage unless people can see the cables and makes upgrades and repairs. Yes, David, I agree with you 100%. I only cable tie my own because I'm just so used to it. But yeah, if you're building for your own purpose, it doesn't matter. You know, you don't need to go this crazy. I do this because this is going to a customer. We know we have to make it look good, because if we have to open it up in front of a customer too, it needs to look organized. You know, it needs to have empty space there. It needs to have proper airflow and stuff like that. By the way, airflow is not really that affected by cable ties. It's just more about it landing on like a fan or something. You know, that's the only thing I'm really concerned with. I want to have to send a technician out to literally move a piece of cable from a fan or something. You know, that's just a waste of a service call. But yeah, if you're doing this yourself, go for it, man. You don't need to waste the time on this. Just build it the way you want to build it. Because like you said, if you upgrade, you have to then undo a whole bunch of cable ties, which, you know, obviously every one of my technicians that, you know, that I work with yell at me because I use like 90 cable ties, and they get pissed at me because when they're like, Brian, I got to upgrade one thing and it took me like 30 minutes because I got to cut all these ties. But you know what the difference is? You didn't have to go out there ever again to worry about that. So, all right, I got this almost done. Let me do one more over here. One more. There's always one more. One more tie. Always one more. Okay. Put this over here. What? There we go. That here. Okay. All right. All right, so we're just ready at this point to cut some tails. We're just going to cut the tails off. Be careful not to cut any cables, of course. All right. Okay. So it's this. All right, that's tucked in. I'm okay with that for now. All right, we're going to flip this over. Now the good question is this processor supported with this motherboard? I have a feeling it's not supported right off the bat with the current BIOS. I doubt it. What I'm doing right now, by the way, before I even do that, I should probably say I am checking the cables to be sure all the cables are pushed under and outside and away from all the fans, including the GPU fan, which is very important. This is the only one that I really don't like having in the middle of everything. But I'm going to move this fan. But for now purposes, I'm just going to tie it over here to kind of just get it out of the way. I just don't want it getting grinding on something. And then I'll just move when I move the fan, I'll recut it. But for our purposes right now, we're just going to take this over here and just kind of tie that up. Oh. David, if you don't want to answer or not, but where'd you retire from? What were you doing before you retired? Just curious. Because it says you build for me or by request, so I assume you probably worked in tech, or maybe you're an engineer or something. If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer too. If you don't want to answer, it's okay. Just curious. All right, we're ready to hook up at this point. Well, that's a lovely view. You guys are seeing all black. That's great. All right, so I'm going to hook this up to a keyboard and mouse. We're going to see if it boots up. I have a feeling it's not going to boot up. Building and repairing computers. Awesome. All right, cool. So at least, yeah. Well, that makes sense. It's nice to be retired, though. Oh, so wonderful. All right, let's do. Yeah, let's do this. Let's switch it back over here. All right. Okay, so let me get my stuff together here. We need a keyboard and mouse, which I have over here. Out of the way, of course. Keyboard, mouse. I believe I moved this studio around like 3 times, and I still feel like it's like cramped in here. All right, so let's plug in. What we're going to do is we're just going to plug in USB for the keyboard mouse. We're going to not plug into the one that says BIOS just in case we need to use that one to flash the BIOS before we can do everything. But we're going to try without Qflash and see if it works. If it doesn't work, we got Qflash. That's the whole point of that. Well, Qflash-plus, sorry. I keep saying Qflash, but there's actually a difference. Qflash-plus allows you to actually boot it without the system being on and having all that stuff. Where did I put my cables? Oh, it's over here. Aha. Okay. It's way over here. All right. Yeah. And we're crisscrossing cables all over the place. All right, whatever. It's fine. It's going to get messy. Okay. All right, so let's power up and see what we got. Let's put this on to, if it powers up, HDMI. I'm going to use HDMI because that's what my thing has, my output has. We're not going to plug in Ethernet yet. There's no need for that anyway. And we're going to attempt to power this up. Did I hit the button? Sorry about that. All right, so let's go over to 4. It's going to be black for that for right now. Let's do that. Let's flip this on. Oh, go flip the switch. All right. All right. By the way, if you noticed, I didn't close up the case, and there's a reason why I don't close up the case. When you first build the system, you don't want to turn on anything that, you want to make sure like things are all working properly before you close the case. It just happens to be one of those things that are like a little bit of a tradition with me. When you're done, you can close everything up, but when you're kind of still building things, you want to make sure everything posts first. I don't know how many times I've closed up a case and then had to go reopen it and waste time, so. I had a feeling this processor's not supported on the first BIOS. All right, this happens sometimes. We're going to use Qflash-plus if this is. I'm going to give it another minute because AMD is really slow. Like, it is really, like the new processors, they take a long time for that memory training to happen, and sometimes the boot sequence is like literally a minute. So let's wait about a minute just to be sure. See? Look. Okay, see, it supports it. But you see, I was already doubting myself. All right. Anyway, let's move this over to full screen. Okay. So let's do, let's update the BIOS with the newest version. Just so we have the newest version. Let's put this in. By the way, I have a USB flash key. It just has the BIOS on it. I downloaded it from GIGABYTE's website. Nothing really, really fancy. Go. Now, of course, it asks, it says, new CPUs installed, TFTPM, NVMe corrupted. That's normal because the new processors have TPM or TPM modules, the FTPM for AMD. But it's a security module, so it's going to reset. That's okay. Just hit yes to this. That's fine. Let's get in the BIOS. I'm hitting the delete key to go to the BIOS if it doesn't already want to go. Oh, it's rebooting again. Okay, that's fine. All right, so the BIOS is just going to tell you clear CMOS BIOS. This happens. That's fine. Hit OK. Okay, yeah, you can also do cable management after it boots too. Yeah, that's probably a smart idea. I mean, I just kind of like, yeah, I kind of like skip a lot of steps because I'm just like, I'm so used to it just booting. So let's do the BIOS really quick. So I put in the flash drive. I need to go to advanced mode because I can't stand the easy mode. Advanced mode, and I need to go to Qflash. I'm going to hit update BIOS. I'm going to choose the BIOS that I downloaded, which is F32A. It's a little newer than the one that's currently installed. I'm going to hit the next button. It says, is secure flash system must restart. Okay, it's just basically warning you we're going to restart. That's good to go. Let's say yes. And of course, an ID check error, which just sucks. Let me just try one more. Let me try with double clicking. Nope, does not like that file. Ugh. All right, F32A, F30. It doesn't like F32A. Oh, you know what? Let me go back. You know what? I think this flash drive is not FAT32. Let me unplug that. I got a different one with FAT32. That's probably why it doesn't like it. I'll try that again. BIOS. Oh, I didn't pick it up. Crap. Back. Qflash. There we go. Get that in. Doesn't like that. Am I the wrong board? A620M S2H. You know, one of these days something will go nice and smooth and it'll be a miracle. Oh shoot, it's revision 1.2. Ah, I downloaded 1.0. Okay, not a problem. We'll unplug this. We will go over to my other system. Sorry guys, it's going to be on my logo for a minute until I can get my other keyboard. All right, so we got to fix that. We got to download the right thing. So this is a good learning experience. Yeah, we don't need that. That. Yeah, we're Londoners, who cares? All right, so we need to look up gigabytes. Gigabyte, no, we don't want gigabyte.com. And it's a A620 MS2H. I selected, see, it comes up with revision 1. I downloaded revision 1. Being stupid. I wanted 1.2. And go to support. BIOS. F32A again. With the proper F32A. I'm just going to open up that. Did I plug in the drive? Yes, I did. All right, so well, I opened it up in WinRAR, but you guys can do whatever you want. You don't have to use WinRAR. We want to take the one that says F32A, drag it over to our flash drive. I'm going to get rid of this gigabyte bin. It's not confusing. And that should fix it. Let me take that drive out, and we will go back to the main system. Plug the drive back in. All right, and oh, let me exit and come back. So it picks up the new drive. Yep. So we now have F32A again, the right one. By the way, if you noticed, obviously, it doesn't let you install the ROM BIOS. So it always has that ID check. If you get that ID check, then you know something is wrong. Obviously, the wrong BIOS. Could be also a FAT32 issue on the board. That is a possibility. It's rare, but it does happen. So when you do update your BIOS, if you notice, this one was pretty quick, but some BIOSes take a long time. You may want to also make sure you're on stable power, because what you don't see here, down below over here, we have a UPS battery on this entire area over here. So this bench is already protected by that UPS battery. Just in case the power goes out, we still have enough time for the BIOS to fully finish. Now with Qflash-plus, that protects you a little bit more, because if the BIOS doesn't come up, then we know at least you can always still reflash it using Qflash BIOS. Still verifying the files, still installing the second section, so just leave it go. Don't touch anything. Just sit back, relax, wait for it to do what it's going to do. It's going to verify the file, make sure the file is 100% intact. Do not remove the flash drive during this entire time. Leave the flash drive in. Seven. Okay, now it's updating the BIOS. This may take a minute. Maybe a little longer than a minute. That's all right though. After we do this, then we're going to load up the Windows operating system, which I have another flash drive for the Windows operating system. You can use the same flash drive usually, as long as it's not NTFS. Let this go. Oh, we don't need the case cover. During this time, I usually like to just clean up the desk, get things a little bit more organized, get rid of boxes that don't need to be here, because it's going to take some time. This is all garbage. By the way, I'm not sure if you guys can hear that fan running in there. That's obviously the graphic card running at 100%. That is normal when we first boot. It's just not controlled yet. When you get into the operating system, it'll kick back down and go to normal numbers. If it doesn't kick back down for you, then you may want to check to make sure you have the proper driver installed, and also make sure that you install, I think with MSI is, they have that MSI. I have MSI Afterburner too. I think it also allows you control of the fans a little bit. So you can actually manage that, or overclock if you want, or underclock. Okay. Wow, this BIOS is really new. It's on 8/28/2024. There must have been a security bug or something to be that new. Probably that sinkhole thing, or whatever it is. Sink close? I think it's sink close vulnerability. I think that's probably fixed in this one. While we're waiting. Now I already closed it. Never mind. I was gonna check the website to see if it had a reason. All right, 51. As anyone in tech will tell you, most of our job is watching a progress bar or a percentage. Especially when it comes to updating, it's just always a long process. All right, 60. I should probably turn the music on while we're waiting. I can't hear the music though if I turn it on. All right, maybe let's go back to this. Turn the music on. Hit some tunes on while we're waiting. There we go. So I'm not all that bored. Well, of course now it picks up. There's always a timer. It always picks up when I'm like getting through it. All right. And now it slows down. Should leave the music on all the way. All right, 93%, we're almost there. We're gonna change only a few things in the BIOS. This RAM, I think supports XMP. I tossed the box already. Should be XMP. Yes. Should be, yeah, 5200 megahertz. So once that reboots, we're going to set up XMP really quickly. YouTube save music, yes. Yeah, yep. It's the royalty-free, simple, probably really boring music. Sorry, guys. I know that music's probably not that great. Definitely not my taste. All right. During the reboot, sometimes this does take a little bit of time. That's okay. Just gotta wait it out. The first few reboots with AMD is going to be kind of tough. You gotta kind of wait through it. And we're almost there. Come on. This is a while. There we go. Okay, so once we're back up, I like to go back to advanced mode just to make this simpler for me. I'll turn myself off here so I can see the whole thing. Okay, so what we normally do, we're just going to take a look at Tweaker for a second, make sure everything is good here. We're going to change XMP profile to XMP1. Double check it. It does say DDR5 5200, so it is correct. We're just going to leave it the way it is. XMP high bandwidth support, we're going to leave that off, but if you're doing something where it doesn't require it to be stable, you could try turning that on. XMP is pretty stable as it is, but you also should still run a memory test with XMP on to make sure that everything is supported. CPU looks like it's fine. We're going to go over the settings really quickly. Power looks fine. We really don't need to change anything. I/O ports. PCI Express slot 1 is correct. Integrated graphics should be on disabled because we're not using it. Why you want to disable this? So that you have the most amount of RAM available to your system. HD audio. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, there's another one that I really hate. This Gigabyte Utilities downloader configuration. You want to disable that. That's going to basically keep trying to download drivers that we already have. And it installs a lot of bloatware and some other garbage. So just disable it. USB should be fine. NVMe should show up with your hard disk, which it does. SATA configuration, we don't have any SATA ports, but you should leave it on just in case you got to connect something. Network is fine. System information, you can set your date and time and stuff, but I do this in the operating system. It's just easier, so we don't do that. We're going to boot off the flash drive, but we're not going to boot off that one. And secure boot has to be enabled because we're doing Windows 11, so it's a requirement. And we're going to unplug this flash drive. We're going to switch it to the one with Windows on it. For the faster one. Okay. Save and exit. It'll just confirm what you changed. Should reboot. Now, this reboot may still take a very long time because you just change memory settings. So when you change memory settings with the new processor, this memory training takes a long time for it to actually go through. This could take up to literally a minute, but now, of course, it makes me a liar, and it goes almost 30 seconds, which is not bad. Oh, it's still, no, this is the first reboot. Here comes the second one, and now we're going to load into Windows. And now you should see a little spinning circle. There we go. And now we're into Windows installation. From here, choose your language, choose your time zone, choose your keyboard. I am going to leave the internet unplugged because I want to do a local user account. So I'm going to hit next, and I'm going to leave the Ethernet unplugged, hit install now. We're going to look inside here. And we're not going to enter product key because I'm streaming and we don't want to give away a customer's product key. We do that afterwards. We activate Windows. We encourage you to do the same thing. Windows 11 Pro is what we're doing. You can avoid the ones that are N and is for a different product line. You have to accept the agreement because you really have no choice. Hit next. Go to custom. We're going to install on this disk. Now this gives you the option at this point to make another partition. If you want to set up a secondary partition, you would do that now. If you don't want to set up a separate partition, just select the whole thing. And in this case, we're going to select the whole thing. Next. Going to let it do its installation thing. It will copy some files. It will install features. It will try to install updates that obviously won't happen, and then reboot. By the way, not having the internet connected does not allow you to always make a local user account. You also need to set up an ini file on the installation, a configuration ini file that will allow you to bypass the local user account, like the whole Microsoft account, and go right to a local user account. If you want to do a Microsoft account, then you can just ignore all of that. I personally just don't like the Microsoft account. It's more complicated. It syncs a lot of stuff. It also ad tracks a lot of stuff that you may or may not want. So, you know, for our customers, we keep it very simple. They can always add a Microsoft account later, by the way. You can always add it. It's never automatically removed or anything. It is available still to do that. It requires a lot more information. It requires an email address. It requires a lot of stuff to sign in with. It's rather annoying. And if you forget your password, it's really hard to reset. And you'll have a really bad day to get that going. So we're going to restart now. It should switch it to the main boot drive for going forward. If it doesn't, then go back into the BIOS and reset it. We'll find out right now and see if it does it. It should go to the main boot drive. It looks like it is. It's going faster. If you go back to that purple screen, then you know you're booting off the flash drive again. So you'll want to go back into the BIOS, reset it up to go boot off the Windows Boot Manager, which is the main drive. Yeah, it looks like we're good. Now, it's going to probably say getting ready. It's going to find some devices, install some stuff. That's normal. It's going to do another reboot again. And when it reboots, it should bring us to out-of-box experience at that point. Anytime now. I'm just very impatient, by the way. This is normal amount of time. It does take some time to install, so. Okay. Should reboot again. Yep. The reboots get a little faster each time because, you know, it doesn't have memory training to keep going through every time. It's only when you power off the unit for a very long time or disconnect and power off the unit that it has to go back through memory retraining again. All right, just a moment. Felt like a few more than a moment, but okay. We're getting things ready for you. No, I'm just kidding. All right, we're getting into this. Now it's going to be the out-of-box experience. It's going to ask you again what country you're from. Obviously, you choose the country you're in. It'll ask you language and keyboard layout. Just choose whatever one that you're in. If you want to add a secondary keyboard, you can add a secondary one. We're not doing that today, so skip. I'm going to lie here and say we don't have internet, but we do, obviously. Continue with limited setup. And it's going to ask you for a username. We're just going to put B1 for now, just for boot once. We're not going to put a password, but I encourage you to do. Hi, we're getting things ready for you. I've read this 20,000 times. All right, during this time, there's no progress bar, there's no nothing. It's just going to do this little breathing effect. That's fine. You know, a little blue breathing effect in the background. Just wait it out. You really have no other choice anyway. At this point, you could technically connect the internet, but it may prompt you for a Microsoft account again. I usually wait until I get all the way to the desktop before I connect the internet and run all the updates and turn off a few features to make it not keep asking me about the same stupid question. Let this go. Ugh. Loading. This is not exciting. I really would prefer progress more. At least it's entertaining. This is not entertaining. This is not even common. All right, now we're at the main desktop. We're ready to continue on. I'm going to connect the internet first because we're going to obviously need that. And we're going to need drivers as well, but we already have the drivers on the flash drive. I already downloaded those. So hopefully I got the right ones. Let's do that. We're going to take from the flash drive that I have, we're going to take the B1 folder, we're going to cut that, we're going to put it onto the main drive, just so it loads a little faster, because it's all compressed right now. Drivers are done. Okay, let's start installing all the drivers. Going to extract all. This is chipset. At this point, you don't need the flash drive plugged in, so you can unplug that. Leave it out. Now, these drivers may install slower because we're connected to the internet, so it's probably downloading updates in the background. So I'm just going to go continuously install everything. You should probably do one at a time, though. Especially if you're new to this, you may want to do one at a time. I already know which ones break and which ones don't. Okay. 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 Some of these also may require a reboot. We're going to reboot a bunch of times. So just install all drivers. I usually like to install all drivers first. You may get a black screen like that. That's normal. That's the graphic card driver loading in the background. When we connect to the internet, it already probably started downloading Windows updates in the background. This is normal. Just let it do its thing. You can continue processing as you go. Just be careful on reboots. Before you reboot, make sure that all the Windows updates have either patched or gone through. Okay, we all know those. At this point in time, while we're waiting on this, we could also set the date and time because that's wrong. So we're just going to go over to time and language, date and time. We're going to change the time zone because that's wrong. We're going to go to Eastern time. That's where we are now. -5, yep. Sync now. The proper time, which it is. Proper date. Need that. Okay, I already installed the graphic card driver because it's an NVIDIA card, so I already picked it up. But it obviously, if you've noticed, it installed also a bunch of other junk and bloatware. We're going to ditch that shortly. We're going to wait for the operating system to catch up on the updates first. Just install all of this. I'm going to check the device manager. See how far off we are. Not this management. Device manager. Right now, all the drivers are good. So we have everything installed. The only problem is the NVIDIA graphic card driver is the one from Microsoft. I'm not a big fan. I would download either GeForce now, like the GeForce Experience, or the new one, which is I think called NVIDIA app. I could be wrong on that. Be sure to download those, because that one actually has an automatic driver update, which we're going to do a little later. But it requires a sign-in and a whole bunch of other garbage. So we're not going to do that right now, but we'll do it later. But the point is, you would want to install that. We're going to install these updates really fast, let that download. But drivers are already in, which is good, which means we got every driver from the operating system, from the website, which is correct. And there's no exclamation points on any of these. Everything looks like it's installed correctly. No issues. That's a good thing. I'm going to let this download really quick. While that's going, I'm going to go to privacy settings and change a few things like general. I don't like these things on. These are tracking garbage. I also like to just double check diagnostics and feedback. I like to turn this to never. Just, it speeds up the machine a little bit by not having this crap run in the background. Camera. Oh, it's a tricky one. I usually like to leave this off, but if someone's using Zoom, they're going to need that on for that to work. So we're going to leave it on for now, but honestly, if you're paranoid about the camera usage, you can flip these off, but honestly, you should probably leave your camera disconnected, unless you're going to use it, just so you don't have to worry about it. Microphone, same thing. I would usually turn this off, but if somebody's using Zoom or something, they're going to need it on. So we usually, depends on the customer. I know this customer uses Zoom, so they're going to need that on. Notifications, that's fine. I also change a few things in system notifications. I don't like the additional settings here. I uncheck all this garbage because this will pop the Windows Experience welcome screen a few times and it'll try to get you to put a Microsoft account in again. Plus it'll also try to show you tips and tricks, which are just annoying. They're not really tips nor tricks. They're just stupid. Go back to privacy settings. You may want to change anything in here that you want to lock down. If you don't want screenshots to happen, you can turn those off. Picture library or anything else being associated to any account, you can turn off. These are all up to you, basically. We set a pretty hefty one, so we just set everything kind of like minimal. But also another thing that I would like to always change is, obviously date and time, but I also like to edit the power management because the power plan usually is incorrect. Hard disk, I usually set this to 0 because we have an NVMe drive. It doesn't make any sense to turn it off. Wireless, we never set to anything except for full max. We turn off sleep. If the customer wants sleep, they can turn it back on. These aren't set in stone, but I like to turn it off because it gets in the way of a lot of things. I know how many times people are like, oh, my system shut down. It didn't shut down. It basically went to sleep, but the person accidentally hits the power button and then it shuts down and then they lose all their stuff that they had open. So turn off display after 35 minutes is fine. So I like to leave sleep off just because of that. We have a lot less problems, a lot less phone calls about issues. All right, it's on pending restart. Let's say restart now. We'll do a few more updates, and then we're going to run the bloatware removal tool just to show you how that works. We have a bloatware removal tool. It's available for download. We have it for free. It's should be in the description. If it isn't, we have a YouTube video about the Windows 11 download. You can go there, and it has a link to our website where you can download it. And it's a PowerShell script, completely free. It will remove a lot of the junk in Windows 11 that most people probably don't want. So we're working on a better program for that. We're getting it out of PowerShell, but it's taking a little while because I haven't had time. So, but when I have a little more time, I'm going to reprogram that into a .NET application so it's a little easier to execute. Because the Windows PowerShell one is a little bit harder. I'll show you why in about 2 seconds when it comes back up. But it does get rid of a lot of the junk. Also, I want to go to .NET because .NET offers me a lot more programming language, so it allows me a little more flexibility in the operating system to do a little more with removing stuff and resetting stuff up the way we want to set it up. And it'll allow us a little more faster way of doing stuff instead of this. So you'll see there's a lot of stuff installed here. It also has a lot of stuff installed in here, which is just like junk, like Clipchamp, whatever it is. We don't need that. Cortana, we don't need. Feedback Hub, we don't need. Mail and Calendar. But instead of doing this and removing each one individually, which takes forever, you could just open up Windows PowerShell, run as administrator, of course. Whoop. Move it into something you can read. Change to the folder that you downloaded our lovely shell script into. And you can type out the directions because you're going to need the one command here. Set auto exec policy, blah, 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 remote assigned. And hit A. And we're going to say ampersand remove bloatware because that's what we're going to execute, the PS1 script. And it's just going to remove all that stuff for you. You can sit back and relax while it gets rid of all this junk. I would say shit, but it's junk. It is both. Let it go. Once it's done, it's pretty quick. It says deleted service. It also gets rid of the the telemetry, it also resets this to main C drive instead of the other way, which is annoying. So if you click start, you'll notice a lot of the stuff went away, but it still doesn't get rid of these programs because they're not really installed. They're just links to installs. So we're just going to ditch these because we don't need them. And that's it for this. This is very simple. Usually what we'll do after this is we'll install whatever browser the customer wants, any software that the customer wants. We'll also continuously update the rest of the operating system, which is still has a few things to go. Also, if you go to installed apps, you'll notice there's a lot less in here, including the Xbox stuff has been removed. The reason why we get rid of all that stuff is because, simply put, we don't need it on a business machine. It shouldn't be on a business machine. It gets rid of solitaire and stuff like that because most customers don't want it. They don't want employees playing around on games. So that's why it's doing that. But that's about it. After that's installed, you're good to go. I mean, your operating system's ready. You should activate your Windows. You probably should set up, you know, any other software that you need to install, etc. I usually do browser first just to get it out of the way and also set up what browser you want. Some people like Edge. Most people like Chrome. I've been trying to tell people to go to Firefox for a long time because Firefox is the better browser. It just works better. It's much better about your privacy. You know, you don't end up with tons more advertisements and junk like that. Still get advertisements, but just not as many. All right, this is installing those last few updates, but we don't have to watch this. This is literally watching a progress, Marco. So, yep, that's about it for this one. Let me go back to the main screen. So this is about it for this installation. Obviously, we'll put the covers on. I usually wipe it all down, you know, maybe do a little more cable management, put these screws in there. We'll also load up the customer's software, get it all ready to go. This one happens to be replacing another machine, so we'll do a data transfer as well. So we're going to data transfer from his old unit to the new unit. And I'm going to move that one fan, which I really didn't like, in the back. I'm going to move it to the front instead, just because of the way the cable management is. It'll be a little bit better. But yeah, that's about it for this one, guys. We have another few builds coming up in a few weeks, so stay tuned, stay subscribed. We also have we have a few more trainings, a few more tutorials coming out. So we do have videos usually coming out. I try to do one every few weeks, but I only want to do stuff that basically makes sense to do. We have some stuff coming up with like TrueNAS, if you guys are into that. OpenVPN on TrueNAS, we're doing that as well nowadays, so that's another thing that some people are interested in. We're going through a full TrueNAS build, I think, actually, and a full setup. So that video is coming out very shortly. Get subscribed, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. Like this video if it makes sense to you, if you liked it. If you didn't like it, hit dislike, that's okay too, I'm not going to take offense. But if you hit dislike, leave a comment on why you didn't like it. You know, if you didn't like the live stream, please do let me know. I like to know feedback. Maybe we could do something more fun or entertaining. All right, so we're gonna go. Mail call. That mail call. Oh, mail, like he's getting his mail. That's awesome. All right, guys. Until we see you to the next one. Have a great one. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon. Bye. And